still a student, suddenly forced to marry. That's the predicament this young woman finds herself in. Due to a pact made years ago by their grandfathers, Shin Ki-kyung unexpectedly finds herself betrothed to the crown prince. From that moment on, both become entangled in a messy, unwanted situation. What will they do to escape this twisted fate? Let's dive into the story to find out. Li Shin is the crown prince, heir to the throne. Despite his royal status, he doesn't attend a prestigious school reserved for royalty. Instead, he attends a regular high school with other kids his age. Every time the crown prince arrives at school, the entire student body goes wild, especially the girls. They rush out to catch a glimpse of their dream prince, screaming and squealing with excitement. Only Shin Ki-kyung remains indifferent to the royal heartthrob. In stark contrast to Li Shin's opulent life, Shin Ki-kyung, her full name, is a third-year high school student. Shin Ki-kyung comes from an ordinary family, burdened with mounting debt. Although she studies design, her fashion sense is, to put it mildly, questionable. She habitually wears sweatpants under her school uniform. Shin Ki-kyung hangs out with a close-knit group of 4 friends. Her friends are completely obsessed with a crown prince. While they spend their days swooning over the handsome and charismatic prince, Shin Ki-kyung has only one goal: to become a world-renowned fashion designer. While everyone else is intimidated by the crown prince, to Shin Ki-kyung, Li Shin is just another classmate. One day, while going to dump her dirty paint water, she accidentally bumps into Li Shin, staining his pristine white shoes. He immediately takes them off and tells Shin Ki-kyung to throw them away. Shin Ki-kyung is no pushover. She stands up to him, scolding and criticizing him. She says, "So what if you're the crown prince? Big deal. At home, I'm a princess too, you know? I'm not your servant." Before she can finish, Li Shin turns around. He tells Shin Ki-kyung, "You're the only one who dares to defy me. I've got my eye on you." With that, the crown prince steps closer to Shin Ki-kyung, his face approaching hers. Ki-kyung puckers her lips, leading her friends to believe they're about to witness a romantic moment. But that's only what Shin Ki-kyung is thinking. How could she possibly dare to defy the future king? During lunch break, while wandering around, Shin Ki-kyung overhears Li Shin proposing to a classmate. However, he is rejected. At the climax of the scene, Ki-kyung's phone rings loudly, startling the two inside. The crown prince rushes out and discovers that the eavesdropper is Shin Ki-kyung, but she quickly runs away. After school, Li Shin spots Shin Ki-kyung riding her bike. He immediately gets out of his car and warns her, "Keep your mouth shut. If anyone finds out about this proposal, you're dead meat." Upon returning home, Shin Ki-kyung's parents informed her of her arranged marriage to the crown prince. The engagement was a promise made long ago by their grandfathers, and now the royal family wished to honor it. Shin Ki-kyung vehemently protested the preordained union. Despite her objections, Shin Ki-kyung obeyed her parents and went to the scheduled meeting. Inwardly, she had no intention of agreeing to the marriage. Seeing his daughter's reluctance, her father didn't want to force her. Just then, a group of thugs arrived at the house demanding payment for debts. They caused chaos, shouting threats and creating a disturbance. A heated argument ensued, escalating into a chaotic brawl. Amidst the commotion, the palace officials arrived to escort Shin Ki-kyung away. Sitting in the car, she realized that given her family's dire financial situation, marrying the crown prince was the only way to save her parents from ruin. Shin Ki-kyung was then taken to the palace to await the queen. Restless and clumsy, she wandered around, touching and inspecting everything. She occasionally knocked things over, adding to the general disorder. Even a simple act like drinking tea resulted in her spilling it all over her nice dress. Just then, the queen arrived. Upon seeing Shin Ki-kyung, she expressed her disapproval. The queen stated that despite the arranged nature of the engagement, Ki-kyung was free to refuse. Unexpectedly, Shin Ki-kyung announced her acceptance of the proposal, her reason being straightforward: she wanted the royal family to help her parents. Hearing this, the queen became even more displeased with her future daughter-in-law. In contrast, the queen mother was delighted with Shin Ki-kyung. She addressed her in formal court language. However, the courtly speech differed significantly from everyday language, leaving Shin Ki-kyung's attempts at polite conversation sounding awkward and confusing, almost causing the queen mother to faint. Next, Shin Ki-kyung was taken to meet the crown prince. When she questioned his reasons for agreeing to the marriage, Lee Shin explained that he found her ordinary, simple, and amusing, like a character from a children's story. Insulted, Shin Ki-kyung stormed off. After agonizing over whether to go through with a marriage, she sought advice from her friends. They cautioned her against rushing into marriage at such a young age, warning her of future regrets. Taking their advice to heart, Shin Ki-kyung ran home to retrieve a token of the engagement, intending to break it off. However, upon reaching the bus stop, before she could even board, news of her impending marriage to the crown prince had already flooded the media. Pictures of her and Lee Shin were everywhere. At this point, how could she possibly back out? Shin Ki-kyung sat at home, crying uncontrollably. Ironically, her tears weren't due to the inescapable marriage, but rather the humiliation of having an unflattering picture of herself plastered all over the news. The next morning, Shin Ki-kyung stumbled out of bed, half asleep, and without having washed her face or brushed her teeth. This extremely disheveled state was captured from every angle by the paparazzi. Shortly after, her bleary-eyed face was plastered across the front page of every newspaper. The Queen Mother found this highly amusing, much to the Queen's annoyance. The Queen Mother was, on the whole, quite pleased with her preordained granddaughter-in-law. Back at Ki-kyung's house, reporters swarmed the entrance. Her family had to struggle to help her escape the throng of journalists so she could go to school. Even at school, she found no peace, surrounded by constant gossip and judgment, especially regarding the unflattering photos of her sleepy morning appearance. Originally, Shin Ki-kyung wasn't betrothed to Lee Shin, but to his cousin, Prince Lee Yul. Because Lee Yul's father had died when he was 5, and Lee Shin's father subsequently ascended the throne, the engagement was transferred to Lee Shin. Lee Yul and his mother had been living in England since his father's death. Upon hearing news of Lee Shin's impending marriage, Lee Yul's mother called him back to Korea. Lee Yul returned and visited his grandmother, informing her of his decision to remain in Korea. He then enrolled in the same school as Shin Ki-kyung and Lee Shin. Coincidentally, due to their shared major, Lee Yul was placed in the same class as Shin Ki-kyung. As for the crown prince's secret girlfriend, after rejecting his proposal, she left the country to participate in a ballet competition. However, seeing the widespread discussion about the new bride and the crown prince, she became increasingly irritated. The protagonist was filled with uncertainty. She wondered why the crown prince wanted to marry her when he already had someone he loved. Lee Shin's answer hurt her deeply. He explained that he didn't want to cage the woman he loved. Furthermore, he demanded she remove her hideous sweatpants, deeming them unworthy of his status. With that, he abruptly left. On the day Shin Ki-kyung entered the palace for instruction in royal etiquette, she donned an elegant, traditional dress. The old adage proved true: fine clothes make the man or woman. Shin Ki-kyung seemed transformed. She emerged from the gate, greeted by a flurry of reporters and crowds of well-wishers lining the streets, waving flags and flowers. Shin Ki-kyung was taken to the palace to learn the rules and customs of royal life. Overwhelmed by the mountain of books and regulations, seemingly as numerous as the UN army, Shin Ki-kyung's eyes nearly popped out from reading. When the queen came to visit, she found her future daughter-in-law fast asleep. Despite the court lady's attempts to wake her, Shin Ki-kyung remained soundly slumbering. Worried about the upcoming events, the queen instructed the court ladies to thoroughly educate the future crown princess, hoping to avoid any future mishaps. Bored with her studies, Shin Ki-kyung snuck out, resulting in a scolding for the court ladies attending her. The queen complained to both the queen mother and the king. Already disapproving of her future daughter-in-law, the queen found her clumsiness and irresponsibility even more exasperating. After a short period, Shin Ki-kyung completed her crash course in royal etiquette. The examination took place amidst palpable tension from the two court ladies attending the future crown princess, as they faced severe punishment should she fail. Shin Ki-kyung, employing the time-honored student survival skill of cheating, managed to pass the initial basic test. Her arm flew across the paper as she furiously copied down answers. While her friends prepared to welcome the crown princess, Shin Ki-kyung sat in the palace, homesick and missing them dearly. While diligently studying, she received a visit from the crown prince, who offered words of comfort. He told her to endure a few years by his side. promising to divorce her and grant her freedom once he came of age. Following a suggestion from Prince Li Yul, Li Xin also brought her a large bag of candy. He further promised to allow her to visit her parents once a month. Finally, the wedding day arrived. Shin Ki Kyung's parents entered the palace to participate in the ceremony. Outside, crowds gathered, eagerly awaiting the unique event. The streets were packed with people, flags, and banners. People lined the streets to watch the wedding procession, broadcast live on every news channel. International reporters covered the event for a global audience. Inside the palace, with her parents present, Shin Ki Kyung received final words of advice and guidance for married life. After listening to her parents, the crown prince and princess left the palace to parade before the people. Cheers and well wishes followed the bridal procession wherever it went. The atmosphere was electric. Meanwhile, at Shin Ki Kyung's home, congratulatory phone calls poured in non-stop. Previously, no one had paid much attention to her family. But now, as in-laws to the king, they were suddenly popular. After a long day of wedding rituals and ceremonies, even the most energetic individuals would be exhausted. Li Xin and Shin Ki Kyung fell fast asleep. However, they still had one more ritual to complete. As they were both minors, the consummation ceremony couldn't take place that night. They shared a single meal together, which marked the end of the wedding day's formalities. Facing each other, they couldn't even lift their chopsticks without assistance. Court ladies attended to their every bite. After the meal, the crown prince had to leave. Shin Ki Kyung pleaded with her husband to show her more consideration, explaining the difficulties she faced adapting to palace life, unlike Li Xin, who was born and raised there. In response to her plea, the crown prince coldly stated that caring for others wasn't his inclination. He wasn't accustomed to it and didn't know how, so she would have to manage on her own. Angered by his indifference, Shin Ki Kyung bit Li Xin's hand hard when he extended it to her. Prince Li Yul received a call from his mother overseas. She had watched the wedding broadcast and announced her return to Korea the following day. She told him to wait a little longer, and she would reclaim everything that had been taken from them. As for Hyo Rin, after competing in various rounds, she achieved considerable success, earning a scholarship to study abroad. However, after watching the Crown Prince and Shin Ki Kyung's wedding on television, Hyo Rin decided to return to Korea. She refused to lose such a brilliant man. After the wedding ceremony, Shin Ki Kyung moved into the palace and was given her own quarters, located near Crown Prince Li Xin's residence. Waking up in the opulent palace for the first time, Shin Ki Kyung excitedly explored every corner of her new home. This was followed by a formal greeting with the Queen Dowager by both couples, the King and Queen, and the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. The Queen Dowager instructed her children and grandchildren on family etiquette. Shin Ki Kyung was assigned 3 highly skilled female guards for her protection. She was also given a portfolio containing details of all the assets she now owned. Shin Ki Kyung was stunned to see the figures representing her vast newfound wealth. Just counting the numbers took her all night. She was overjoyed to become incredibly rich. Still brimming with excitement, she arrived at school the next day, continuing to jot down her assets in a notebook while riding in the car, a goofy grin plastered on her face. The car carrying the royal couple finally entered the school grounds. As usual, the Crown Prince's arrival at school caused a flurry of activity, with students rushing to film and photograph him. The difference now was that they weren't just admiring the Crown Prince. The Crown Princess was also a target of their attention. Shin Ki Kyung then received her gym pants back from Prince Li Yul, unaware that he was, in fact, her destined husband. Recognizing him as the new transfer student, she warmly welcomed him. Upon entering the classroom, Shin Ki Kyung was met with icy silence from her 3 close friends. They were retaliating for her ignoring them at the wedding. Despite her attempts to win them back with various gestures, she was unsuccessful. Dejected, she confided in Prince Li Yul, trying to understand her friend's sudden change in behavior. They connected well, and Shin Ki Kyung felt relieved to have someone listen to her troubles. Meanwhile, the Crown Princess Hyo Rin had returned from her competition. She called Li Xin out to talk, attempting to gauge whether he still wanted to continue their relationship. But looking at his face, she already knew the answer. Returning to class after unburdening her heart, Shin Ki Kyung stepped onto the podium to tell her friends about her unexpected ascension to Crown Princess. To her surprise, the class greeted her with a tiered cake, a shower of confetti, and heartfelt congratulations. Even the teacher, upon entering, jokingly commented that Shin Ki-kyung had gotten married a bit early, stealing her chance at matrimony, before joining the students in their celebration. With the crown prince now married, Prince Lee-yul became the new object of affection for the girls at school. While at the airport to meet his mother, he encountered an old friend of his father's, who was there to interview her. Hyo-rin, the crown prince's former girlfriend, also requested a meeting with Lee-yul and his mother at the airport. Coincidentally, Hyo-rin's teacher turned out to be a former dance junior of Lee-yul's mother. It was then that Hyo-rin learned that Lee-yul, not Lee-shin, was originally meant to be the crown prince. The queen, already apprehensive about her nephew Lee-shin's return to Korea, became even more worried upon learning of her sister-in-law's return. For the commoner Shin Ki-kyung, even everyday meals became a meticulously documented affair, a true ordeal. Exhausted from a full day of school, she faced additional burdens of studies and royal training each evening, leaving her utterly drained. To add to her woes, she witnessed the crown prince happily chatting on the phone, correctly guessing that he was talking to Hyo-rin, deepening her distress. While dining with Shin Ki-kyung, Lee-shin received a call from Hyo-rin. After he finished the call, Shin Ki-kyung told him he could freely talk without worrying about her. However, the crown princess was reading too much into the situation. Lee-shin was merely pointing out a grain of rice on her face. Shin Ki-kyung criticized the crown prince for gambling with marriage for personal gain. Lee-shin retorted that she only agreed to marry him for his family's wealth. This caused Shin Ki-kyung to burst into tears, scolding him before running back to her room, leaving him bewildered. In her frustration, she ran outside and encountered Prince Lee-yul. While visiting the Queen Dowager, the two enjoyed a relaxed and cheerful conversation. Their lively chat was interrupted by a call from Lee-shin, summoning her back to her room. Lee-shin then proceeded to tease Shin Ki-kyung relentlessly, telling her to go home, then back to the palace, and then to invite her friends over for a meal. This led to her friends disguising Shin Ki-kyung to sneak past the guards so they could enjoy street food, only for Lee-shin to abandon her, leaving her to return on her own. The Queen Dowager remained critical and constantly gave instructions regarding her daughter-in-law. Shin Ki-kyung's parents were invited to the palace. After meeting with the Queen Dowager, the king and queen, they were escorted to Shin Ki-kyung's quarters to visit her. However, Shin Ki-kyung was occupied with her studies, and due to the queen's orders, the court ladies couldn't allow her to stop. By the time she finished her studies and returned to her quarters, her parents had already left. After a tearful outburst, she resentfully criticized the crown prince for not keeping her parents longer, despite her expressing how much she missed them. However, she had wrongly accused him, as he hadn't known they had left. That evening, as they sat together in the living room, seeing Lee-shin wearing headphones, Shin Ki-kyung confessed her feelings. She acknowledged his love for Hyo-rin and her belief that he would marry her after their divorce, expressing her sadness and heartbreak. At that moment, the crown prince stood and walked away. Curious, Shin Ki-kyung checked what he was listening to, only to find the CD player empty, revealing that he had heard her confession. Mortified, she rushed back to her room. On the crown prince's birthday, all the young elites gathered for a lavish celebration. Shin Ki-kyung, being a commoner, felt out of place in the opulent setting. Furthermore, she was subjected to constant attacks from the crown prince's friends and Hyo-rin, who sought to embarrass and humiliate her throughout the party. Even her gift, a pair of shoes she painstakingly made herself, was deemed cheap and unworthy compared to the extravagant presents offered by others. This angered Shin Ki-kyung's friends, but also made them feel more sympathetic towards her. They attempted to present their own gifts to the crown prince, but Lee-shin showed no further interest. His sycophantic friends even arranged a separate relaxation area for themselves, excluding Shin Ki-kyung from being near the crown prince. Instead, Hyo-rin sat right next to him. Shin Ki-kyung and her three friends retreated to the lakeside to commiserate. They consoled her after witnessing her ostracization. Shin Ki-kyung inadvertently revealed that Hyo-rin was the crown prince's true love. Overhearing this, Prince Lee-yul joined their conversation. The group ended up playfully pushing each other into the lake and splashing around. Lee-shin observed his wife's carefree frolicking from afar, feeling a pang of envy that he couldn't participate. Li Xin put on the shoes Shin Ki Kyung had made for him, a small smile playing on his lips. Just then, Hyo Rin arrived, and they shared her headphones, listening to music together. These moments, and others between Li Xin and Hyo Rin, were captured by the press. For over a decade, the Crown Prince had personally inspected the king's food and drinks every morning. Shin Ki Kyung was surprised to learn this, as the palace already had multiple layers of security, making such a precaution seemingly unnecessary. Lately, Prince Li Yul had been visiting the palace daily to pay his respects to the Queen Dowager. However, discerning observers realized that visiting his grandmother was merely a pretext. His true intention was to see the Crown Princess. After meeting with Shin Ki Kyung, Prince Li Yul took her to the palace where he used to live. Li Xin was aware of this and later cautioned her to be mindful of her actions. Shin Ki Kyung retorted defiantly, challenging him. "If you want to be with that other girl, why don't you try harder to stay together?" Frustrated but unable to reprimand her, Li Xin was relieved when it was time for the White Lotus tea ceremony with the elders, preventing further argument. Enjoying White Lotus tea and reciting poetry was a long-standing palace tradition. The elders and the Crown Prince all recited poems eloquently. When it was Shin Ki Kyung's turn, she luckily recalled a few verses she had memorized recently, reciting them and earning the Queen Dowager's praise. The next day, Shin Ki Kyung met Prince Li Yul at school, thanking him profusely. She and her friends then taught him the student slang, enjoying a light-hearted lesson. The popular sport within the palace was jokgu, similar to golf. Shin Ki Kyung joined her husband, and they strolled through the palace grounds, hitting balls. The Queen Dowager observed them with satisfaction, pleased to see the young couple enjoying themselves. An art exhibition opening was scheduled for that day. Shin Ki Kyung and Li Xin participated in the ribbon-cutting ceremony, followed by photos and interviews. During the photo session, Li Xin was unexpectedly hit in the face with an egg. Despite Shin Ki Kyung's attempt to shield him, it was too late. The incident caused widespread commotion. Extremely worried about Li Xin, Shin Ki Kyung wanted to visit and comfort him, but Prince Li Yul advised against it. She reluctantly agreed, but to Li Xin's misfortune, he saw her sitting with Prince Li Yul. Overcome with concern for Li Xin, Shin Ki Kyung walked away, tears welling up in her eyes. Seeing her distress, Li Xin reassured her that he was fine, even making light-hearted jokes to ease her worries. Suddenly, Shin Ki Kyung rushed forward and embraced Li Xin from behind, repeatedly apologizing. Touched by her gesture, the Crown Prince, however, responded with insincere words, angering her. Later, Li Xin went to a horse-riding club with his wealthy friends, leaving Shin Ki Kyung behind. Meanwhile, Li Yul's mother returned, determined to reclaim the throne for her son. She opened a luxurious yoga studio and began networking. There, she encountered Hyo Rin, and the two, sharing similar circumstances, found common ground for conversation. A diplomatic banquet was held at the palace to welcome foreign ambassadors. While picking up his wife, the Crown Prince gazed admiringly at his commoner wife, stunning in her evening gown. As the banquet progressed, Prince Li Yul and his mother arrived. Li Yul's mother, resplendent in a red gown, attracted considerable attention, drawing photographers and reporters for interviews. This greatly worried and angered the queen. Following tradition, the Crown Prince invited his wife for a dance. Despite some initial awkwardness, they fulfilled their diplomatic duty gracefully. The banquet concluded with a spectacular fireworks display, a first for Shin Ki Kyung. In her eagerness to get a better view, she jostled and pushed, nearly knocking over the king. In the commotion, she lost one of her shoes. The Crown Prince retrieved the shoe and knelt to place it on her foot, as onlookers watched in admiration. The next morning, Shin Ki Kyung, still caught in a Cinderella-like dream, excitedly recounted the incident. Her relentless romanticizing of the event exasperated the Crown Prince, who reminded her that the ball was over. As a young woman navigating this new world, Shin Ki Kyung began to develop feelings for Li Xin, blurring the lines between genuine care and public display. Delighted by his smile, she painstakingly crafted a huggable body pillow and attached a photo of Li Xin's face to it. The Crown Prince was not amused by this childish gesture. He scolded her, suggesting she focus on learning proper etiquette instead of making frivolous things. Disheartened by his reaction after all her effort, she angrily pummeled the pillow. This outburst, however, struck Li Xin as endearing. He even secretly took photos of her. The next morning, Shin Ki-kyung dressed in a beautiful dress to pay her respects to the elders. She was surprised to learn that Li Shin hadn't waited for her. He'd gone ahead to ask permission for them to visit her parents. Finally, after days of longing, Shin Ki-kyung's wish was granted. Even a simple visit home by the royal couple attracted a flurry of reporters and photographers eager to document the event. Li Shin, raised in the palace, had never experienced ordinary life. Surprisingly, he adapted quite well to his in-laws' humble home. After a relatively lavish meal, the question of sleeping arrangements arose. Understanding their limited space, Li Shin made no demands. After some deliberation, the only option was Shin Ki-kyung's small bedroom. The room, and especially the bed, were far too cramped for the crown prince. The young couple bickered over who would sleep on the floor. Finally, exhausted by their argument, they squeezed onto the tiny bed together. In the middle of the night, Li Shin awoke to find Shin Ki-kyung snuggled against his back, having left a small puddle of drool on his shirt. He couldn't stay annoyed, however, looking at her peaceful, puppy-like sleeping face. Worried about the couple's comfort, her parents tiptoed in to check on them. They found their daughter sleeping soundly in a rather undignified position. Her mother's approach startled Li Shin awake. Shin Ki-kyung, waking in turn and mortified to find herself sprawled across the crown prince, shoved him away in embarrassment. Her parents offered their own room to Li Shin, but he declined. In the end, one slept on the bed, the other on the floor. After much tossing and turning, the young couple finally fell back asleep. In the morning, Li Shin was delighted to witness his in-laws preparing breakfast. He and Ki-kyung then went out to the vegetable garden to pick fresh greens. Accustomed to the refined world of the palace, everything in this simple environment was a novel experience for Li Shin. He reveled in the ordinary. The family then enjoyed a happy, delicious breakfast together. Having shared a bed, Shin Ki-kyung spent the next day at school in a daze, realizing she was captivated by Li Shin. That evening, after dinner, Nam gallantly offered to wash the dishes while Shin Ki-kyung, drawn once again to Li Shin, impulsively hugged him from behind. Still half asleep and bewildered by her sudden embrace, Li Shin reacted with surprise, pushing her away. After dinner, the family played games together, an experience Li Shin had never had before. The royal couple lost to her parents and younger brother and were punished with playful slaps on the hand. While Shin Ki-kyung received the full brunt of her parents' playful discipline, Li Shin got off lightly. Even her parents were hesitant to truly punish the crown prince, their slaps more like gentle tickles. Seeing this, Shin Ki-kyung loudly protested the unfair treatment. After 3 days and 2 nights at her parents' home, the young couple had grown accustomed to each other's presence. Back at the palace, they tossed and turned, restless and unable to sleep. Finally, they both wandered out to the living room and sat talking. After a while, Li Shin, exasperated, told his wife that if she liked touching his back so much, she should do it when he was awake, rather than startling him with unexpected embraces. Just as Ki-kyung was about to hug him, a servant interrupted, not once, but twice. Frustrated, Li Shin dodged her attempted affection. The next morning, he recounted his stay with his in-laws to his grandmother and mother. The queen mother was highly amused by the stories of commoner life. Li Shin, caught up in the moment, addressed the queen as mother, earning himself a swift reprimand. She warned him not to let such common sentiments cloud his judgment. Li Shin, disheartened by his mother's words, was cheered up by Shin Ki-kyung's playful antics. Used to the palace's restrictions, Li Shin wasn't allowed to ride bicycles. However, Shin Ki-kyung, less bound by such formalities, somehow procured one and rode it around. After she mentioned her intention to focus more on her studies, Li Shin requested a car for her. The next morning, the queen mother presented Shin Ki-kyung with her beloved, bright yellow, bug-shaped car, entrusting her with its care. Arriving at school, Shin Ki-kyung was shocked to find all the girls sporting her signature style, the uniform skirt paired with sweatpants and a high-side ponytail. She was flattered when her friend declared her a trendsetter, a style icon for the other students. Even a crown prince has moments of rebellion. Li Shin hid in the attic, causing a frantic search among the guards. Shin Ki-kyung, however, found him within minutes, thanks to her familiarity with similar hiding spots in her own home. As they talked, the guards finally located them. Shin Ki-kyung's shout of discovery was stifled by Li Shin. and in the ensuing struggle, they ended up on the floor, Li Xin on top of her. The atmosphere grew charged, but the moment was interrupted by a phone call from the pesky ballerina, Hyo Rin. It turned out that Hyo Rin wanted Shin Ki Kyung to join their elite horseback riding club. Unsure of Hyo Rin's motives, Shin Ki Kyung nonetheless agreed to go, accompanied by Li Xin. Hyo Rin, attempting to goad Prince Li Yol, had invited the crown princess to the club to flaunt her closeness with Li Xin. A minor riding accident involving the two princes occurred. While all the court ladies and guards rushed to Li Xin's side, Li Yol was left unattended. Unable to reach Li Xin through the crowd, Shin Ki Kyung went to check on Li Yol. Li Xin, seeing his wife's concern for his cousin, was visibly annoyed. Though he still didn't expect their marriage to last, he found himself bothered by her apparent closeness with Li Yol. Wandering around, Shin Ki Kyung inadvertently stumbled upon Li Xin's darkroom. He was inside, lost in thought. Only then did she notice his injured arm. She expressed her concern, but he brushed it off. She spotted a photo of Hyo Rin pinned up, but before she could examine it, an irritated Li Xin sent her away. She quickly retreated. Due to the king's poor health, the diplomatic trip to Thailand was delegated to the crown prince. The king suggested that the young couple travel together, but Li Xin flatly refused. Still smarting from their recent disagreements, he couldn't bear the thought of being around Shin Ki Kyung. Thus, it was decided that the crown prince would go to Thailand alone, while Shin Ki Kyung remained behind to focus on her studies. With Li Xin in Thailand, Shin Ki Kyung missed him terribly, pacing anxiously. She sewed clothes for the bear he often hugged, relying on servants for news of him. Aware of his lingering annoyance from the horseback riding incident, she didn't dare contact him directly or inquire about him through Prince Li Yol. Meanwhile, Li Yol's affection for Shin Ki Kyung continued to grow. Had his father not passed away, he mused, he might have been her husband. Unable to keep his feelings hidden any longer, Li Yol confessed to his mother that he had fallen for Shin Ki Kyung. He insisted that he didn't care about others' negative opinions of her. His feelings only deepened. Despite her promise to the Queen Mother, Shin Ki Kyung's curiosity got the better of her. She climbed onto the yellow bug car, causing an accident that left the vintage vehicle beyond repair. She faced the Queen's disapproval for the damage. The Queen Mother, however, visited her to ease her guilt, explaining that the car was old and should have been retired long ago. She also reassured Shin Ki Kyung about her relationship with Li Xin, sharing how the crown prince had visited her and spoken fondly of his wife. In Thailand, Li Xin's schedule was packed with meetings and official engagements. Coincidentally, Hyo Rin was also nearby. Having researched Li Xin's hotel and itinerary, her scheming was evident. Servants reported Shin Ki Kyung's frequent calls, but Li Xin ignored them, unwilling to communicate with her. He even turned off his phone when he learned of Hyo Rin's presence. Li Xin sought Hyo Rin out. He urged her to stop pursuing him, reminding her that he was married and his position allowed no other options. Hyo Rin, in turn, poured out her woes, asking how much longer she had to wait before their relationship could be public. In a classic push-and-pull maneuver, she made to leave, only to be drawn back by Li Xin. They spent the day together, their cheerful interactions captured by the press. After evading reporters with the help of some local drivers, they continued their sightseeing, even ducking into a hotel to escape the paparazzi. After seeing Hyo Rin off at the airport and receiving a parting kiss, Li Xin returned to his duties and his life as crown prince. Unable to reach Li Xin, and deeply upset by his behavior, Shin Ki Kyung asked Prince Li Yol to take her somewhere to clear her head. She left her phone at school, sparking a frantic search when she couldn't be found. Chaos ensued, with her family and palace officials desperately trying to locate her. Shin Ki Kyung, finding solace only in Li Yol's company, confessed her love for Li Xin. She then added, thoughtlessly, that she fell in love easily, and if she had met Li Yol first, she might have loved him instead. This admission only deepened Li Yol's sorrow. News reached the queen that the crown princess was out with a man, though his identity remained unknown. Li Yol's mother contacted him, demanding he return Shin Ki Kyung to the palace discreetly, emphasizing the need to avoid further complications given their delicate political situation. Meanwhile, Li Xin's security team located him at the airport after his farewell to Hyo Rin. With only 30 minutes left before his press conference and traffic gridlocked, the police escorted him and his two guards. The press conference, scheduled to begin, stalled for time with footage of the Korean royal family and the crown prince. Despite using a motorcycle, Li Xin faced further delays, including a herd of elephants crossing the road. Finally, he abandoned the motorcycle and traveled by river. After a strenuous journey, he arrived just in time, and the press conference concluded successfully. The image of Li Xin wearing a traditional Thai garland charmed the public. Upon her return to the palace, Shin Ki Kyung faced the queen's wrath for leaving without permission. Prince Li Yul also received a scolding. Shin Ki Kyung was then confined to the palace, forbidden to leave without the queen's express consent. Witnessing her distress, a heartbroken Li Yul confronted his mother, declaring, "Make me emperor, mother, for I cannot bear to see the woman I love treated this way." During a visit from the British prince, with Li Xin still in Thailand, the king, queen mother, queen, and crown princess received the honored guest. Shin Ki Kyung, tasked with showing the British prince around the palace, was nervous about her limited English. To her relief, Prince Li Yul appeared and greeted the British prince. Together, Li Yul and Shin Ki Kyung escorted the prince, attending various events. Shin Ki Kyung even joined the court musicians, despite her lack of musical skill, in entertaining their guest. The visit concluded amicably, fostering goodwill between the two royal families. This royal family's traditions have a messy imprint. The story from the past is also a bit heartbreaking. Prince Li Yul's mother was previously in love with Prince Li Xin's father, but she married her lover's brother in order to become queen. Then, unexpectedly, her husband died early, so she never attained the position of queen. Now, returning to the present, Prince Li Yul's mother wants to use this past love affair to ask the king for help, to restore Prince Li Yul's position in the palace. As for Shin Ki Kyung, she's been exhausted by everything that's been happening, partly because she misses Li Xin and hasn't eaten for several days. Finally, the crown prince's diplomatic trip has ended. Li Xin returns and finds Shin Ki Kyung standing forlornly outside the door. Li Xin realizes his wife is troubled. He teases her to break the tension. He says, "You should have run to hug your husband when you saw him return." Shin Ki Kyung cries and scolds him, calling him hateful, annoying, and inconsiderate. Finally, Li Xin hugs her and promises to go together next time. Li Xin was raised from a young age to always control his emotions, not to express them outwardly even if he wanted to. The crown prince rarely reveals his inner thoughts. Seeing the teddy bear that has been sewn a new outfit, he sits and laughs happily to himself, bringing the gift box to his wife but sneaking around like a thief. Clearly delighted, yet when he hears his wife's thanks for the gift, Li Xin changes his tune and claims he doesn't have the habit of buying gifts for anyone. He says it was the servants who bought it. Since Li Xin's cousin, the princess, returned from her charity trip, all the palace servants, including the crown prince, have been surrounding her and ignoring Shin Ki Kyung. This makes Shin Ki Kyung extremely annoyed and frustrated that no one is paying attention to her anymore. Prince Li Yul's mother meets with old acquaintances to discuss helping Prince Li Yul regain his position as crown prince. An intelligence officer gives her photos they took of Li Xin and Hyo Rin in Thailand. There are even pictures of them kissing. That evening, Shin Ki Kyung is in her room. The weather is too cold, so she goes to the crown prince's room. Shin Ki Kyung is just looking for an excuse to talk to Li Xin. With Li Xin's permission, Shin Ki Kyung climbs into his bed to warm up. She wonders aloud if she was supposed to be Prince Li Yul's wife. Li Xin confirms that's true. Then, he teases her with a slightly petulant tone, saying, "If you feel regretful, you can still change things." However, when he looks down, Shin Ki Kyung has already fallen fast asleep. Just as he finishes pulling the blanket over her, the queen enters, holding a newspaper, looking very angry. Seeing the two of them in bed, she says a few words, and the crown prince objects. He says, "This is my and my wife's room, our private space. Why did you enter without asking?" The reason for the queen's visit is an article in a Thai magazine with photos of the crown prince and Hyo Rin together. The queen demands an explanation from the crown prince, then leaves. Shin Ki Kyung runs from her room to the crown prince's. She also sees the article and the pictures. When she questions the prince, he says he has no obligation to explain this to her. Li Xin tells her not to be curious about such things, as it will affect her health. Hearing this, Shin Ki Kyung is furious. She retorts that he doesn't need to worry about her health. Li Xin scolds her. Why haven't you been eating or sleeping, becoming so thin and weak? Shin Qi Kayang can't hold back anymore. She confesses her feelings, saying she missed him so much that she couldn't eat or sleep. Then, she returns to her room. Regarding their chance encounter in Thailand, Shin Qi Kayang didn't think much of it. But Hyo Rin frankly stated that it wasn't a coincidence. She intentionally went to Thailand to see him. She also declared that she didn't care about the position of crown princess. She only wanted Li Xin's heart. After days of not eating or sleeping, Shin Qi Kayang fainted before she could finish her conversation. Li Xin rushed to her side. Back home, Prince Li Yul visited Shin Qi Kayang and took her outside for some fresh air. Seeing her condition, he felt saddened. He said, "Shin Qi Kayang, please don't be sick, because seeing you sick makes me ache too." Li Xin entered his room and couldn't find his wife. Seeing her on the balcony talking with Li Yul, he felt a pang of annoyance. He immediately went over and criticized her. "You're sick. You shouldn't be sitting outside." She complained back, "I'm sick because of you." Li Xin pulled Shin Qi Kayang back inside, teasing her about her weight and telling her she needed to lose some. Afterward, the two princes talked. Li Xin said, "You shouldn't be so concerned about your younger brother's wife." Hearing that their daughter had fainted and was ill, her parents were very worried. The Grand Queen Dowager summoned the couple to the palace to see their daughter. Worried that her daughter-in-law wasn't eating, she had them bring in food that Shin Qi Kayang liked. Then, her parents asked the Crown Prince's permission for Shin Qi Kayang to stay with them for a few days, but Li Xin refused. He said, "Even though she gave permission, I am her husband. This is a matter between us. I don't want elders interfering." In reality, the Crown Prince was worried that if Shin Qi Kayang left the palace, she would never return to him. Finally, he told Shin Qi Kayang, "I want you to have an ordinary life. Just wait for me 2 or 3 more years, and I will relinquish the position of Crown Prince. Then, you can do everything you want." Li Xin discussed palace matters with the king. He wanted to be recognized by his elders and the people. He wanted to become more mature to prepare for his plan to leave the throne. He didn't want people to say he was acting impulsively. The Grand Queen Dowager listened attentively as her niece recounted her charity trip. She looked at the photos from around the world, admiring her niece. Having grown up confined to the palace, everything was new and fascinating to her. Meanwhile, the queen heard that Prince Li Yul's mother had now gained the support of palace officials. Worried, she met with her sister-in-law and said, "If you want to compete, compete openly and fairly for the children. There's no need for secrecy." Li Yul's mother approached the Grand Queen Dowager and revealed the recent scandal surrounding Li Xin. A servant informed Li Xin that his grandmother was angry about the incident in Thailand. Just then, Hyo Rin called. Li Xin agreed to meet her outside, despite the servant's attempts to dissuade him. They met at a bookstore. Li Xin poured out his heart, then told her he wouldn't see her again. However, the persistent Hyo Rin refused to accept the breakup. At her cake decorating class, Shin Qi Kayang made a beautiful cake and brought it to Li Xin's locker. Opening it, she found another cake already inside. While she was fumbling, unsure what to do, Li Xin arrived. He coldly rejected her cake. The Grand Queen Dowager decided to restore the positions of Li Yul's entire family. His father was proclaimed king, his mother queen, and Li Yul himself regained his position as crown prince. The ceremony proceeded as planned. However, the king collapsed before he could address the people during the assembly. This caused great concern, except for Prince Li Yul's mother, who was pleased. After the investiture ceremony, Prince Li Yul and his mother were allowed to return to their former palace residence. The National Museum invited the Grand Queen Dowager to attend a charity event. She wanted to attend with both Li Xin and Shin Qi Kayang, but the Crown Prince had a prior engagement, so only Qi Kayang accompanied her. Qi Kayang went into Li Xin's photography room to borrow his camera. She accidentally came across a box containing mementos related to Hyo Rin, which Li Xin treasured. When Li Xin returned, he found his wife teary-eyed, emerging from the room. The box was on the table, indicating that Qi Kayang had seen its contents. Grandmother and granddaughter enjoyed their visit to the charity event. Suddenly, they saw Li Xin there as well. He sheepishly explained that he couldn't refuse his grandmother's summons. Qi Kayang told him to greet his grandmother, claiming she was tired and needed to rest. The Grand Queen Dowager invited the young couple to go out together, but Ki Kyung protested that it wasn't proper. The Grand Queen Dowager retorted, "Rules are made by people, so they can be flexible." Eventually, the three of them took a car and went out together. The Grand Queen Dowager and Ki Kyung sang songs, then made both Li Xin and Ki Kyung dance for their entertainment. They had a joyful outing. On their return, the car broke down. The Grand Queen Dowager declared that they would have to solve the problem themselves, without calling the palace. Just then, a tow truck appeared and pulled their car all the way back to the palace gates. The three of them were quite embarrassed in front of the palace staff upon their arrival. While the Crown Prince was working, Ki Kyung paced back and forth, still upset about the letter from the ballerina. When the Crown Prince allowed her to sit with him while he worked, she jokingly remarked that the national seal must be delicious if it's used to open peach boxes. After answering her various questions, Li Xin confessed that he would be lonely without her. Hearing this, Ki Kyung happily left the room. Since the king had purchased insurance sold by Ki Kyung's mother, upon hearing of the king's illness, Li Xin's in-laws visited the palace, bringing numerous gifts. Li Yul's mother was officially designated as the Queen Dowager, solidifying her position in the palace. The Queen Dowager then summoned the Crown Princess, but failing to reach her, went to the East Palace herself. There, she grilled and quizzed Ki Kyung extensively about her studies and life, criticizing her harshly for not being more diligent in her education. Fortunately, Crown Prince Li Yul arrived in time to rescue Ki Kyung. He couldn't bear to see his beloved treated that way in front of the palace maids. Afterwards, Li Yul took Ki Kyung to the library. They talked for a long time. Seeing the woman he loved playing the piano, the Crown Prince's heart stirred. He recalled their moments together, her image filling his mind. Later, the two playfully danced and sang. Crown Prince Li Xin observed this scene from below. The rumors surrounding the Crown Prince worried both the Queen and the Grand Queen Dowager. Meanwhile, the king's health continued to deteriorate. Finally, although it was earlier than the initial one-year plan, the Grand Queen Dowager decided to expedite the couple's consummation to hasten the arrival of an heir. The palace buzzed with preparations for their special night. Li Xin was given tonic, while Ki Kyung was escorted by court ladies for beauty treatments. The Queen Dowager, upon learning about the consummation, spoke to Li Yul, suggesting that the Queen, perhaps worried about her own position, had pushed the matter forward. Crown Prince Li Jun, overhearing this, was unwilling to accept the situation. He attempted to intervene, but guards stationed at the door prevented him from leaving. After the two were ushered into the room, the court ladies exited and locked the door, leaving the couple to deduce the elder's intentions. With the heater turned off, the room grew cold. Only one blanket was provided. In the chilly air, Li Xin urged Ki Kyung to get under the covers, telling her not to be shy, reminding her they had already shared a bed twice. Her cumbersome headpiece proved impossible to remove, hindering even lying down. Inside, Li Xin helped his wife take it off. The resulting commotion and sounds emanating from the room fueled the court ladies' imaginations and speculations. With the headpiece finally removed, they faced the elaborate and rustling traditional wedding robe. Li Xin instructed Ki Kyung to take it off, but she resisted. Outside, the court ladies, overhearing the playful banter, blushed. Already fond of Ki Kyung, they felt a mix of amusement and awkwardness imagining the scene unfolding within. A young man like the Crown Prince, sharing a blanket with Ki Kyung in the middle of the night, combined with the effects of the tonic they were given, inevitably led to a charged atmosphere. Finally, Li Xin said, "Let's just do what the elders want." Ki Kyung protested, then tried to distract herself with exercises, hand-clapping games, and various other diversions. Exhausted, they eventually ended the long night with a kiss. The court ladies reported to the Queen Dowager and the Queen that the important matter had been successfully concluded. The elders rejoiced, unaware that inside, Ki Kyung slept soundly while Li Xin counted sheep until dawn. The next morning, they awoke in each other's arms. Upon opening their eyes, they both yelped in surprise, then bickered over who had embraced whom. Li Xin insisted the kiss had only lasted a second and that he hadn't been in control of himself. Frustrated, Ki Kyung left Li Xin and returned to her own room. On the balcony, she encountered Prince Li Yul, who inquired about her well-being. After she assured him she was fine, Li Yul embraced her. Li Xin arrived just then, pulled her away, and scolded Li Yul. An argument ensued. Li Xin was annoyed by Shin Qi Kaiyang's contrasting reactions, disgust at his kiss, yet comfort with Li Yul. He blurted out, "If you don't like me, then just run away with Li Yul." Shin Qi Kaiyang questioned Li Yul about his behavior that morning. He decided to be honest, confessing his love for her. He admitted he had previously believed she was unattainable, but now, the position Li Xin occupied was rightfully his. He vowed to reclaim what belonged to him, promising to always take care of her if she chose him. Later, Li Yul informed Hyo Rin about Li Xin and Shin Qi Kaiyang's consummation ceremony. He had tried to stop it, but failed. He challenged her. "Are you still confident you can win Li Xin's heart?" Hyo Rin firmly replied that she hadn't even begun, so the outcome remained uncertain. At school, photos from Li Xin and Hyo Rin's trip circulated. Shin Qi Kaiyang's friends confronted Hyo Rin, warning her against pursuing another woman's husband. That evening, Shin Qi Kaiyang received numerous printed photos of Li Xin and Hyo Rin in Thailand, including some of them kissing. The Queen Dowager, the Queen, the Princess, and the Crown Prince convened to discuss these photos, agreeing it was best to keep them from Shin Qi Kaiyang. The following morning, Shin Qi Kaiyang went to school with a noticeably different demeanor, saddened by the sight of Hyo Rin, burdened by the photos she had received the night before. Prince Li Yul summoned Shin Qi Kaiyang for a talk. He tried to persuade her that Li Xin's feelings for her weren't love, but merely pity, while he, on the other hand, was deeply in love with her. Seeing how exhausted she was, he took her out for some fresh air by the river. There, overwhelmed by her emotions, Shin Qi Kaiyang broke down in tears, finding solace as she leaned on Li Yul's shoulder. Afterwards, Prince Li Yul took her to a music hall, followed by an amusement park. As evening approached, Shin Qi Kaiyang told him he could go back first, while she wanted to stay a little longer. Shin Qi Kaiyang then wandered around alone, wearing a helmet to conceal her identity, fearing she might be recognized. When Li Xin learned that she hadn't returned home, he called and then sought out Li Yul to ask about her whereabouts. Upon returning to Shin Qi Kaiyang's room, Li Xin discovered all the pictures of him she kept. His worry intensified, and he went to find Li Yul again, desperate to know where she was. The two princes then set out separately to search for her. Li Xin searched everywhere he could think of, but to no avail. Finally, Li Yul remembered the library where he had once taken her and found her there. He told her that if she wanted, he could take her away. Just then, Li Xin arrived on the scene and saw his brother holding Shin Qi Kaiyang's hand. He rushed forward, hitting Li Yul and pulling Shin Qi Kaiyang away. On their way back, they stopped to talk. Li Xin asked if she knew how worried he had been. He also told her not to be upset about the pictures in her room. Shin Qi Kaiyang replied that she no longer cared about that. She said she was aware of her position and circumstances, but his kindness had given her false hope. However, she no longer wanted anything more. She accepted that she would have to wait 3 more years for a divorce. They then argued about the divorce. Li Xin confessed that he had lived a lonely life for 19 years, but since meeting her, everything had changed. All he wanted was to have her by his side. Having poured out their hearts to each other, they embraced for a long time, reaffirming their feelings. Reconciled, they spent some happy moments sharing their thoughts and playfully teasing each other. News of Li Xin hitting Prince Li Yul spread like wildfire throughout the palace and even reached the outside press. The Queen Mother, Li Yul's mother, summoned the Queen and scolded her for not raising her son properly. Prince Li Yul knew his mother was behind the spread of the news, but he couldn't stop her. He felt deeply disheartened by the situation. The next day, Li Jun didn't go to school. Shin Qi Kaiyang, worried, tried to see him, but Prince Li Yul refused to meet her. At home, Shin Qi Kaiyang's parents, having heard about the Crown Prince's violence, were extremely worried about their daughter. They imagined all sorts of scenarios in which their son-in-law would mistreat her. However, upon further reflection, they realized their daughter was no pushover. They concluded that it was the Crown Prince, not their beloved daughter, who should be worried. While everyone was buzzing about the violence incident negatively impacting Li Xin's image, Shin Qi Kaiyang was worried about her husband criticizing her weight. She pulled out a bunch of hula hoops to slim her waist and shape her hips, then practiced alone. Bored, she even demanded the court ladies join her in the exercises day and night. Shin Ki-kyung accompanied Li Xin to a gathering at the French embassy. The two walked together happily. The main purpose of this trip was to dispel any rumors about marital discord between them. While everyone was engrossed in the concert, Shin Ki-kyung, exhausted from her excessive weight loss exercises, became sleepy. She dozed off in the theater. Li Xin, sitting next to her, was embarrassed by his wife. He called her name repeatedly, but she wouldn't open her eyes. Later, Shin Ki-kyung went to the restroom to wash her face and wake up, but she slipped and broke the heel of her shoe. Ultimately, Li Xin broke the heel of the other shoe so she could walk more comfortably. Next, the two gave an interview to reporters. They addressed the violence between the two brothers and the rumors of marital strife. The crown prince immediately kissed Shin Ki-kyung on the cheek in front of the reporters to dispel the rumors of their fighting. At the Grand Empress Dowager's request, the whole family gathered for a meal and commemorative photos. The meal took place in a cheerful yet strained atmosphere, as each person harbored their own private thoughts. The clumsy Shin Ki-kyung, instead of eating her rice, bit her tongue and started bleeding. While the crown prince got up to get some medicine, Prince Li Yul immediately got up, put some ice in a handkerchief, and ran across the table to give it to Shin Ki-kyung. This action by Prince Li Yul made all the adults at the table sense something was amiss. After the meal, everyone sat down to chat and share stories about the palace. At this point, Prince Li Yul spoke some harsh words about the palace and the royal family's existence as mere figureheads. Following this, the two brothers, Li Xin and Li Yul, argued back and forth about the value and purpose of the palace to the people. The emperor finally had to intervene to stop the two young men. Later, Prince Li Yul sat and talked with Shin Ki-kyung on the balcony. As they were talking, Li Xin approached, took Shin Ki-kyung's hand, and led her inside, not forgetting to give his brother a sharp look. Li Xin took Shin Ki-kyung to the beach. As the saying goes, after the rain, the sun shines again. When you're in love, just being together is enough. Anywhere is fun. The two had very happy moments playing together and took many pictures. At this moment, Li Xin no longer resembled a solemn and dignified prince. He became an enthusiastic, cheerful, and energetic young man. After they finished playing, Li Xin took Shin Ki-kyung to a palace called Han Palace, where people in the royal palace often went for summer vacations. That night, the two decided to stay at Han Palace to fulfill their goal of watching the sunrise over the sea. They went to the supermarket, bought groceries, and cooked. The crown prince, having served in the military, found cooking no challenge. They were like a young couple on their honeymoon, happily eating, drinking, and relaxing. The next morning, they wanted to watch the sunrise, but the bad weather prevented them. Finally, the couple returned to the palace, opened all the photos from their trip, and looked at them together, laughing and chatting happily. Meanwhile, Shin Ki-kyung's parents went to buy her a car after hearing that she had damaged her grandmother's. Since becoming a member of the royal family, Shin Ki-kyung's mother has been inundated with calls from customers wanting to buy insurance. She's become something of an insurance sales queen and is now earning a considerable amount in commissions. The emperor is wavering after a conversation with the Grand Empress Dowager, Li Yul's mother. Combined with Li Xin's recent unruly behavior, the emperor is losing hope in his son. Meanwhile, Hyo-rin, after numerous attempts to win back the crown prince's affections, feels heartbroken and refuses to let go. In a desperate act, she overdoses on sleeping pills and is rushed to the hospital. The crown prince visits her in the hospital, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with her persistent clinging. He has already moved on and wants to end things with his ex-girlfriend. He eventually leaves after criticizing her. Worried, Shin Ki-kyung also visits Hyo-rin at the hospital, but Hyo-rin sends her away. Afterward, the Grand Empress Dowager, Li Yul's mother, visits Hyo-rin. She tells her that Li Xin will eventually be dethroned, and then he will return to her. News of the suicide attempt spreads through the media, throwing the royal family into turmoil. The emperor furiously reprimands Li Xin. Unable to handle the pressure, Li Xin leaves the palace despite Shin Ki-kyung's attempts to stop him. Upon hearing that Hyo-rin has left the hospital, Li Xin goes to find her. He meets her and coldly says, "You've crossed the line this time," before leaving. Li Xin then goes to a bar with his horse-riding club friends. His father's words weigh heavily on his mind. One of his friends, who secretly has feelings for Hyo-rin, confronts Li Xin, saying, "If you don't love Hyo-rin, let her go." When Li Xin returns, she tries to talk to him, but he refuses. Unable to bear it any longer, she goes to his room and reproaches him. "You two decided to be together. Why are you shouldering everything alone? Do you know how worried I've been about you? I couldn't do anything all day, just terrified you were going to cause trouble." After her outburst, she angrily returns to her room, but Li Xin stops her and embraces her tightly. The Grand Royal Queen Dowager, after learning of the events, summons Hyo-rin. She tells her that she recognizes her ambition, and, if she agrees, the palace will provide her with better educational opportunities. Hyo-rin understands that Li Xin's mother wants to separate them, but she accepts, knowing that Li Xin no longer loves her. On her way home, Hyo-rin runs into Shin Ki-kyung. The two girls sit down and talk. Hyo-rin asks Shin Ki-kyung to take care of Li Xin, as he is the one who needs the most support right now. Later, Li Yul's mother, the Grand Empress Dowager, also visits Hyo-rin. She still intends to use Hyo-rin to undermine the Grand Royal Queen Dowager and her family. However, Hyo-rin now understood everything. She accepted letting go, knowing that Li Xin's feelings were no longer for her. She told the Queen Dowager that she didn't want anything anymore. In this battle, she only wanted to focus on becoming a skilled ballet dancer. Afterwards, Hyo-rin gave a press interview. She clarified the whole situation, admitting that she was Li Xin's classmate and confirming that he had confessed his feelings for her, but she had rejected him. The reason for her refusal was her desire to focus on becoming a ballet dancer. She emphasized that she had given up the opportunity herself, and not because she had been outmaneuvered as the press had reported. When her mother bought her a new car, Shin Ki-kyung had her husband teach her how to drive. However, her driving skills were terrible, and her ability to absorb driving instructions was similarly poor. She terrified Li Xin throughout the driving lesson. They drove around and around but made no progress. Li Xin looked at his wife, both exasperated and helpless, but the affection in his eyes for her grew stronger each day. Crown Prince Li Xin asked the Queen Dowager for permission to hold a party outside the palace to celebrate his birthday and the upcoming completion of everyone's studies. Shin Ki-kyung and her friends were also invited. Meanwhile, the Queen Dowager, Prince Li Yul's mother, after learning that the Queen was actively investigating and receiving much information related to the truth of the matter, asked some involved individuals to leave the country to avoid being discovered. At the same time, she schemed, while Prince Li Yul met with many of his father's old acquaintances, with the ultimate goal of overthrowing Crown Prince Li Xin. On the scheduled vacation trip, Shin Ki-kyung chose to drive separately and take her 3 friends. Li Xin went alone, while the others also arranged their own transportation. Due to Shin Ki-kyung's poor driving, it took them over 3 hours to arrive, making everyone wait impatiently. Upon meeting, Li Xin complained that she had taken too long. Meanwhile, Prince Li Yul deliberately drove slower than Shin Ki-kyung out of concern for her. At the hotel, due to the limited number of rooms, the boys shared one room, the girls shared another, and the Crown Prince and Princess were given a private room. Shin Ki-kyung entered the room to get clothes for a shower. Suddenly, Li Xin walked in, causing her to quickly hide in the wardrobe. From inside the wardrobe, she watched Li Xin undress and go to the shower. Although she told herself not to look, her eyes were glued to the scene. Waiting for too long, she fell asleep in the wardrobe. When Li Xin finished showering, he saw his wife tumble out of the wardrobe, utterly startled. Although Shin Ki-kyung repeatedly insisted that she hadn't seen anything, her blushing face said otherwise. This situation mortified Li Xin, but he couldn't do anything about it. The next morning, when Li Xin woke up, he discovered that the video camera had been used by Shin Ki-kyung to record him being playfully decorated with lipstick. Li Xin intended to record a video back to prank his wife, but he ended up captivated by her. Unable to resist, he leaned down and kissed her, and the moment was captured on camera. While the young people went to the birthday party, many issues related to the Crown Prince's position arose within the palace. The elder statesmen and officials gathered together. They discussed the recent incidents surrounding Prince Li Xin. Many voiced the opinion that Prince Li Yul was more suitable to be the future emperor than the current Crown Prince. Even the emperor himself remarked that he increasingly felt Prince Li Yul was better suited for the throne than his own son. Shin Ki-kyung, after waking up, intended to show her friends the video she had taken earlier, teasing her husband. However, when she opened the video, she saw footage of herself sleeping soundly and being stolen a kiss by the crown prince. Both were embarrassed and flustered by their friends' teasing. At the birthday party, everyone joyfully blew out candles, ate cake, and drank. Hyo-rin, a friend, mentioned that Lee Shin was allergic to peach champagne and shouldn't drink it. She then recounted stories of his past allergic reactions and asked if he had told his wife about his peanut allergy. The prince admitted he hadn't. Hearing this, Shin Ki-kyung felt disheartened, realizing the distance between herself and Lee Shin. Shin Ki-kyung overheard Lee Shin talking to Hyo-rin about his plans to study abroad, plans that didn't include her. Saddened, she walked away. Later, while everyone was chatting, Shin Ki-kyung accidentally burned her hand. Prince Lee Yul rushed to get ice for her. She followed him outside, and they accidentally fell on top of each other, witnessed by their friends inside. Lee Shin was visibly bothered by Shin Ki-kyung's concern for Lee Yul, and their friends also found the situation strange, though no one dared to comment. After bandaging Prince Lee Yul's wound, Shin Ki-kyung sat and talked with him about everything related to Lee Shin. Lee Yul said he had a gift for her. Then, before she could react, he kissed her forehead. Lee Shin, standing in the distance, witnessed this scene. He then came and pulled Shin Ki-kyung back to their room. Back in their room, Lee Shin rebuked Shin Ki-kyung for her behavior, leading to an argument. Shin Ki-kyung argued that she was close to Prince Lee Yul because he was genuine with her, unlike Lee Shin, which prevented them from becoming closer. Enraged by what he had seen and by his wife praising another man, Lee Shin lost control and forcefully kissed her, only to receive a hard slap across the face from Shin Ki-kyung. The events at the party further strained the relationship between Lee Shin and Shin Ki-kyung. Aware that Shin Ki-kyung was angry about the kiss, the crown prince went to her room to make amends. However, with his cold exterior, especially given his position as crown prince, he had never had to plead or apologize to anyone. He didn't know how to appease his wife. He managed to utter an apology, but it only led to further argument. In the end, they parted ways, both still harboring resentment. The Grand Queen Dowager summoned her 2 grandsons and granddaughter-in-law for a conversation. Although she inquired about their outing, it was clear to everyone that her intention was to reconcile the 2 brothers, as they were her only grandsons. She expressed her desire for them to support each other in the future. Lee Shin decided to return a box of Hyo-rin's belongings to her. He went to the ballet studio where Zin was preparing for her graduation ceremony. At the same time, Shin Ki-kyung and Prince Lee Yul also went to support Hyo-rin, but they saw Lee Shin and Hyo-rin on stage in what appeared to be an intimate moment. In reality, Hyo-rin had sprained her ankle, and Lee Shin was helping her up. This misunderstanding further complicated their already strained relationship, driving a wedge between Lee Shin and Ki-kyung. Lee Shin looked for his wife in the palace but couldn't find her. Ki-kyung had gone up to the attic, Lee Shin's usual hiding place, burdened with worries. Lee Shin then went to the library where he'd recently made a discovery. He found Ki-kyung there with Lee Jun. While looking through a book, she stumbled upon a picture of her father with her aunt in a very affectionate pose, leaving Lee Shin shocked. At school, everyone was busy preparing for graduation. Ki-kyung went out for street food with her friends. Afterward, Lee Shin picked her up. Knowing his wife was troubled, he took her to her parents' house. He told her, "Stay the night with Mom and Dad. This is all I can do for you. Just relax and stay with your family." Ki-kyung enjoyed a pleasant meal with her family, and her parents and younger brother were delighted to have her home. That evening, Ki-kyung planned to stay overnight. However, her mother, more pragmatic than the rest of the family, insisted she couldn't stay out like that and needed to uphold the palace protocols. Ki-kyung reluctantly said goodbye to her family and returned to the palace late that night. The Queen Dowager, who had been looking for her, scolded Ki-kyung extensively about palace rules and regulations upon her return. Lee Shin defended his wife to his mother, then went back to their room. Instead of comforting Ki-kyung, true to his character, he criticized her, saying, "I went through the trouble of letting you go home, and you couldn't even behave properly, getting me involved in this mess." The couple argued again. Frustrated, Ki-kyung stormed out and drove out of the palace. At that moment, Prince Lee Yul was driving into the palace. Seeing Ki Kyung leave, he turned his car around and followed her. They ended up by the river, where Lee Yul listened to Ki Kyung pour out her heart. After a walk, they returned to find Ki Kyung's car stolen. Fortunately, the thief was quickly apprehended, much to Ki Kyung's relief. However, the incident by the river made it into the news. The car thief claimed to have seen the crown princess on a date with a man outside the palace, creating a serious scandal. Upon learning that Ki Kyung had been with Lee Yul, Li Xin was furious. When Ki Kyung said she would confess the truth to the elders, Li Xin warned, "If you say you were with Lee Yul, you'll both be in terrible trouble." Ki Kyung was forced to lie, claiming she'd met with her father near where Prince Lee Yul happened to be. Worried about Ki Kyung, Lee Yul wanted to come forward with the truth, but his mother forbade him, reminding him of his future role as king. Meanwhile, Lee Jun told Ki Kyung that if he had to choose between the throne and her, he would choose her. The scandal escalated, with news outlets everywhere reporting a serious crisis within the royal family, citing the recent scandals surrounding Li Xin and Ki Kyung as damaging the palace's image. Even Ki Kyung's classmates criticized her, saying she was unworthy of being the crown princess. Ki Kyung, feeling overwhelmed, had no choice but to endure the onslaught. Lee Jun met with Ki Kyung, declaring his willingness to give up everything to be with her. He wanted to come forward and clarify the situation, but Ki Kyung firmly refused, saying, "Let me protect you this time. You're the only friend in the palace who understands me and comforts me when I'm struggling." Regarding the dating incident, the man seen with Shin Ki Kyung near the Hwanggung River clarified to the press that she was meeting her father. However, the car thief vehemently disagreed with this explanation. He insisted once again that the man with Shin Ki Kyung was a young man, not her father. This angered the elders greatly, and the situation escalated, spiraling out of control. The Grand Queen Dowager, astutely sensing something amiss, sought out Shin Ki Kyung and learned the truth. The man with her was Crown Prince Lee Yul. She demanded absolute secrecy about this matter. Crown Prince Lee Yul then discussed with Shin Ki Kyung a way for her to escape her current predicament. At the upcoming press conference, she could publicly announce her desire for a divorce, allowing her to return to her normal life. Shin Ki Kyung went to her parents' workplace, wanting to talk to them. While they were sharing their concerns, the prince arrived and criticized his in-laws for behaving like commoners within the palace. He also stated he wouldn't allow the crown princess to return home. On the day of Hyo Rin's departure for her studies abroad, although Li Xin wanted Shin Ki Kyung to see Hyo Rin off, she refused. She reasoned that her presence would make it harder for them to say goodbye, so it was best he went alone. In the end, Li Xin went to the airport alone to see off his former girlfriend, whom he had once loved. Prince Lee Yul continued to persuade Shin Ki Kyung to request a divorce during the interview, emphasizing it as her only opportunity. Shin Ki Kyung was incredibly conflicted, unsure of what to do. During the live televised interview, the reporter frankly asked about the current state of their relationship, as everyone knew their marriage was arranged. Expecting the interview to be a disaster, the family was surprised when the crown prince took the lead. He declared that although their marriage was arranged, they loved each other deeply. The interview seemed to be concluding smoothly. As the maid was about to give closing remarks, Shin Ki Kyung hesitantly spoke up. After much deliberation, she uttered the words, "We want a divorce." The entire hall fell silent. At that moment, Li Xin took her hand and interjected, "Actually, we had considered divorce. But last night, we decided to stay together." He explained that he truly loved Shin Ki Kyung and understood the hardships she faced adapting to palace life. He thanked her for marrying him and accepting such a demanding lifestyle. He concluded the interview by apologizing to the public for causing them concern. After the interview, as they rode back to the palace, Li Xin was speechless. He was deeply disappointed that despite repeatedly asking her to trust him, she ultimately hadn't. Shin Ki Kyung's public declaration of wanting a divorce was unprecedented. When the king and queen criticized his wife, Li Xin defended her. He explained that the palace hadn't truly understood Shin Ki Kyung, and he hoped they would come to understand her better. He vowed to stand by her side and support her. Later, back in their room, Shin Ki Kyung was filled with regret for her behavior. She explained that she acted that way because she was unsure of Li Xin's sincerity, suspecting he had only answered the interview questions superficially. Li Xin then revealed his true feelings, confessing that his words in the interview were those of a man in love. He admitted he had fallen for her and genuinely loved her, cherishing every moment they spent together. He expressed his disappointment in her lack of trust. Despite this, she remained resolute in her decision to leave him, reiterating her desire for a divorce, even suggesting they announce it publicly on live television. Although Shin Ki-kyung apologized profusely, Li Xin couldn't forgive her easily. A heavy tension settled between them. Listless, Li Xin looked through photos from their trip to the beach, lingering on the images of Shin Ki-kyung's happy smile. His feelings for her deepened. A conference requiring the emperor and his son to discuss matters with court officials was scheduled. However, the emperor, still deeply resentful towards his son, flatly refused to attend with Li Xin. Despite the empress's objections, he remained adamant, choosing to attend with his former mistress's son, completely disregarding his wife and legitimate son's feelings. Overwhelmed with guilt, Shin Ki-kyung knelt before the emperor's palace gates to beg for forgiveness. The emperor questioned her about the mysterious young man's involvement in the incident, demanding to know his identity. Shin Ki-kyung remained silent, unable to reveal the truth. Witnessing his wife's humiliation, Li Xin told her to stop, as her actions wouldn't change anything and the emperor wouldn't be swayed. Shin Ki-kyung insisted on taking responsibility, refusing to rise even when the Grand Empress urged her to. Consumed by regret, she pleaded for the emperor's forgiveness. After the conference, the emperor returned to the palace and found his daughter-in-law still kneeling. Annoyed, he told her to leave, not wanting to appear as a heartless father-in-law. Shin Ki-kyung simply replied, "Your Majesty, please trust Li Xin. He truly treasures your relationship as father and son." Witnessing Shin Ki-kyung's suffering, Prince Li Yul couldn't bear it any longer. He sought the Grand Empress's help, and she, beginning to understand the situation, summoned the entire family. Everyone spoke in Shin Ki-kyung's defense, but the emperor remained firm, insisting on knowing the identity of the man she was with before granting forgiveness. In the midst of the family meeting, Prince Li Yul confessed that he was the man with the crown princess that day. While most weren't surprised, the emperor was taken aback. He directly asked his nephew if he had feelings for his sister-in-law. Li Yul, without hesitation, admitted his deep love for Shin Ki-kyung. Li Xin, overhearing his brother's confession from outside, later confronted him, urging him to give up on any thoughts of being with Shin Ki-kyung. However, Li Yul declared his willingness to renounce the throne for her. Afterward, two young men went to Shin Ki-kyung, who was still kneeling before Li Yul, and escorted her back to her quarters. Li Xin arrived, wanting to take his wife home. Shin Ki-kyung told him she never intended to ask his grandmother for help. After learning the truth about Prince Li Yul's affection for his sister-in-law, the king decided he needed to deal with the situation. He also wanted to know the extent of Shin Ki-kyung's feelings for his nephew. The whole family gathered to discuss the matter. At this point, Li Xin met with Shin Ki-kyung and told her it would be best to say their relationship was purely platonic. However, Shin Ki-kyung confessed she was tired and didn't want to do anything wrong anymore. Shin Ki-kyung reproached her husband, "Why didn't you come to me when I was suffering?" Li Xin replied that he had been betrayed by both of them, and he wanted her to understand the consequences of betrayal. Shin Ki-kyung's family, after learning the story, also gathered to discuss which of the two men was more suitable for their daughter. They imagined that if she married Li Yul, he would dote on her and pamper her. He would be a son-in-law just like her father, unlike the cold Li Xin. Meanwhile, the king summoned Shin Ki-kyung. He questioned why, knowing Li Yul's feelings for her, she didn't keep her distance and even followed her brother-in-law outside at night. Shin Ki-kyung could do nothing but cry. Ultimately, the king decided to punish Prince Li Yul by banishing him from the palace, keeping him away from Shin Ki-kyung. Prince Li Yul's mother went to the king, trying to retract the order by bringing up past romantic affairs, but the king wouldn't budge. Following this, Prince Li Yul's mother spread the story of the crown princess and Prince Li Yul to the court officials. Everyone agreed that Shin Ki-kyung should be stripped of her title as crown princess. Shin Ki-kyung accepted her fate and prepared to leave the palace. Though Li Xin tried to stop her, she said she didn't want anything anymore. She had initially wanted to be by the crown prince's side as his wife and work through their problems together. However, things had escalated to this point, and she felt powerless. She had only caused Li Xin more trouble. Shin Ki-kyung then met with Prince Li Yul and told him she was leaving the palace. She vowed to sever all ties with him after her departure. Next, she went to the elders, requesting to accept the court's decision. She expressed her desire to live as an ordinary person, unable to bear palace life any longer. Li Xin, in his darkroom developing photographs, received a message from Shin Ki-kyung urging him to go to Prince Li Yul's quarters. There, a fire suddenly broke out. After investigating the incident, officials reported to the elders. Among all the suspects, Li Xin was considered the most likely culprit. Prince Li Yul's mother was injured and hospitalized. Of course, it was implied that she orchestrated the fire herself, intending to frame Li Xin, using Li Yul's confession as a motive. If successful, Li Xin would be dethroned, and her son would become crown prince. Li Xin was utterly devastated after everything that had happened. Shin Ki-kyung was deeply worried about him, but didn't know what to do since he refused to see anyone. Finally, she had to go through the head court official to inquire about the prince's well-being. Upon hearing that his health had seriously deteriorated, she defied the prince's orders and rushed into his room to talk to him. She embraced Li Xin and declared that she wanted to stay in the palace because he was there. If he left, she wouldn't want to stay either. Li Xin said he might be expelled from the palace, possibly even stripped of his crown prince title. Ki-kyung confessed that she loved him, not his princely status. She didn't need anything else but him. Li Xin expressed his fear that she would be implicated in the current situation. Ki-kyung, in turn, poured out her heart, saying she was willing to stay by his side, unafraid of the consequences, if only he would ask her to. Seeing no indication that he wanted her to stay, Ki-kyung walked away sadly. However, after only 3 steps, Li Xin couldn't hold back any longer. He called out for her to stay, not to leave. Hearing this, Ki-kyung turned back and embraced him. They then shared a passionate kiss. Now that they had affirmed their commitment to each other, their bond deepened. The young couple talked about their future. Li Xin joked that he might be kicked out of the palace and become homeless, in which case she would have to support him. They playfully imagined a scenario where he would cook and clean while she worked to provide for them. After their reconciliation, laughter returned to the crown prince and princess's quarters. Prince Li Yul witnessed and heard their happy laughter. Heartbroken, he sought solace with his grandmother, breaking down in tears before her. The adults in the family decided that someone had to take responsibility for the recent events. They devised a plan to send Shin Ki-kyung abroad to avoid further scandal, having her take the blame for everything. But Li Xin would never agree to this. He was determined to protect her at all costs. He returned to Ki-kyung, telling her to trust him implicitly, no matter what happened. Now completely devoted to him, she promised to trust and obey him without question. Their classmates spoke with Ki-kyung, asking her to convey their support to the crown prince. They had come to understand the situation and now accepted their relationship. Li Xin met with his older brother, telling him that the crown prince position was rightfully his and he could have it back. He had no desire to compete with him. He also told Li Yul that he had no right to speak of love for Ki-kyung, as his own love had led to her potential expulsion from the palace. Ki-kyung agreed to study abroad, knowing it would ultimately be best for Li Xin. Upon hearing of Ki-kyung's impending departure, Li Yul was furious, telling his mother to stop everything, or he didn't know what he might do to protect the woman he loved. This news also upset Li Xin. He desperately wanted to keep Ki-kyung by his side, but in their current circumstances, neither of them could see another way. Ki-kyung said she would leave to protect him and to make things better. Exhausted and heartbroken, the couple embraced and wept. Shin Ki-kyung wanted to take Li Xin out before she left. The two enjoyed a fun day out together, shopping, playing video games, and strolling through the city. The court lady confessed to being ordered by Li Xin to set the fire and confirmed receiving a payment from his Swiss bank account. The arson case became increasingly clear, with all evidence pointing towards Li Xin. As Shin Ki-kyung's departure neared, a somber mood settled over the couple. Prince Li Yul finally discovered his mother was behind everything, and was heartbroken by his inability to stop her. Shin Ki-kyung was devastated as Li Xin was taken away for questioning. Crown Prince Li Yul, unable to bear the unfolding events and Shin Ki-kyung's pain, and unwilling to let his mother dig herself deeper into trouble, held a press conference. He confessed to everything, including the arson, claiming he did it to reclaim what he had lost. Upon hearing the news, Li Yule's mother drove off distraught and was involved in a car accident. In the wake of these events, the emperor finally recognized his mistakes. Coupled with his declining health, he decided to abdicate the throne in favor of Li Xin. The queen mother thankfully suffered only minor injuries in the accident. Prince Li Jun, expressing his deep love for his mother, proposed they leave the palace and live a peaceful life together, abandoning their pursuit of power. Xin Qi Kaiyang diligently pursued her studies abroad, aspiring to become a top designer. One beautiful morning, she stepped out of her apartment to find Li Xin waiting for her. They spent some joyful time together. His grandmother had also accompanied him to visit his wife. She encouraged the young couple to hold a wedding ceremony as lovers, not as members of the royal family. The Queen Dowager gave Li Xin the family's traditional rings, urging him to express his feelings and propose to Xin Qi Kaiyang. Li Xin proposed a formal wedding, and although Xin Qi Kaiyang asked for time to think, he reminded her he was leaving the next day. The following morning, Li Xin found the ring box in his room and took it with him. As he got into the car, he saw Xin Qi Kaiyang, who asked him to remove her scarf. Upon doing so, he saw she was wearing both rings. A simple wedding ceremony was held with his grandmother as a witness. Afterwards, they took commemorative photos. While everyone was busy taking pictures, Xin Qi Kaiyang experienced bouts of nausea. His grandmother, suspecting pregnancy, asked the couple if they were expecting. The young couple looked at each other, speechless, realizing it was likely true. Thus, this modern royal love story concluded with a happy ending. A fulfilling conclusion to the drama. Goodbye and see you in the next video.